Hey guys, what's going on? It's Neefly here, and today I'm going to be going over some simple loops and kind of just explaining that because I'm going to try and get in the habit of switching between software videos where I'm just making little programs and then also tutorials. And I know one of the things that some people I know need help with is loops because they can be kind of confusing. So what I'm showing should be valid in almost all common languages currently. I mean, if there's anything specific, I'll just say it. But the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make, let's do a void. Let's do a for loop. So I'm just gonna make a new method for this. This is just a console application in C#, Visual Studio. So basically, what do we want to do? Let's have it print. Let's just have it print a range of numbers. So basically, what you're gonna want to have is in a for loop. I'm just going to type it out for you and explain it. Going to go to 10. And so this is what's going to happen in the for loop. So basically, you declare an integer to 0. It should be semi-self-explanatory. And what's going to happen is this you can basically say would be an if. Kind of like if blank is less than whatever your value is. Because you need to increment it, it'll say okay and it'll continue and increment it. So basically, if I0 is less than 10, it'll run whatever's in here. So we'll just say console.write. Let's do line. Right? Yeah. I had to think about that for a second. Write line, and we'll just print I. Oops. And then read key, just so that it doesn't close after you run it. And then we are going to just run the method. So for loop, this is our main static void main string. Oh wait, I need to make it static. If I can type. Yeah, there we go. So when you run it, once it runs, you'll see it prints 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then new line. So, of course, since index starts at 0, if I started at 1, it'd go to 10. It'll count each time, and then once it hits 10, oops, it'll stop the loop and end the program, then hit F to end it. So, that's your basic for loop, and I can go in depth if there's any questions about it. So next we'll do a while loop. Don't do that, that's bad. Actually, you know what we can do? We'll just say no, we'll leave that. We'll just say it's less than a. So don't worry. This is basically just using a parameter so that it'll loop until I is basically equal to whatever you set a to. So this, in case, it'd be 10 again. So for the while loops, I'd say a little easier. They're not too crazy. I mean, the only thing you need to know for a while loop is unless you set parameters that are never met, you'll be fine. So let me see. While, oh yeah, first I need to set a value. So I generally use I when there's a loop and I'm not like counting through a value already determined, so I'll just have an integer for that. So while I is less than a, it'll go through the loop, and we can have it do whatever right here, but we need to say I plus plus. Now this is one of the most important parts about the while loop. Like I said, you don't want it to not reach the value, because this is again like basically an if statement where it's saying if I is less than a, so if 0 is less than whatever our value is there, it'll keep running this, whatever's in these curly brackets. So however many times you want it to run is this parameter. And again, we'll just say console dot write line, and we're just going to print I again. So the only reason I'm just printing I is because there are other ways to use it. Like I'll show, I can do a nested for loop in a second to just show how you go through a two-dimensional array. So just don't worry, it's just kind of useful. But always remember, for a while loop, this whatever is your I'll say left-hand value in your if statement, you need to increment it at the end. So whenever you instantiate a new while loop, always increment your value, or else you will end up with an infinite while loop, and it's not fun. So while loop, I set the static, yeah, so we'll just do 10 again. Now, oh wait, I need to make sure outside of it. Remember, if you're doing, oops, no, if you're not in Java, it won't automatically just keep it open, because this, it actually uses a console. So 1 through 10, well, 0 through 9 for this. Same thing, basically, just goes through this as long as this parameter is not, I guess it'd be false, so while I is less than your value. So there's that. I'm just going to go back, or no, I'm not going to go back, I'll make a new method for it. For while, what is something else you could do with this? Oh yeah, I forgot nested for loop, that's what I was thinking of, so. Static void, nested for. So this is a little different. I'm not going to use a parameter for it just because this gets a little bit confusing, not too crazy, but what's going to happen is you're going to make a new for loop, so for and I is equal to 0, I is less than, we'll say 10, I plus plus. So that you already know, where it's just going to loop through this 10 times, right? So also let's go ahead and household oh, read key, I don't know, I keep saying right line. Read key. Okay. So now this is where it gets a bit confusing for a lot of people when they're first learning loops. So basically when you have a loop inside of a loop, that just sounds crazy, but this is all you need to remember. So now we're going to create another loop inside of it, so we'll say int j is equal to 0, and then you can do whatever value you'd like. J is less than 10. Okay, so just kind of keeping the same loop. J plus plus. So here is where people always get confused, and this is my best example for how you can kind of understand it better. So right now you have two loops. You have an inner loop and an outer loop. I can't speak. Your outer loop is saying how many times your inner loop is going to run. So this is the best way for me to show it. Console. Dang it. I always like that. Console dot. I'm going to say right, not right line, and watch. So when you say, oops, I'm going to say j plus, then a space, and then outside of this, so this, every time this loop is called, it's going to print j, whatever the value of j is, plus a space to separate it because it's written on the same line. And then right under that, you're just going to say console, dot right line. So the whole purpose of this is you'll see that it'll run basically 10. All you have to do to find the number of times it'll run is inner loop amount of times run by the outer loop times. So you run this. Oops, wait, I forgot. Wrong method. Nested for. Did that. So you'll see when you run this, you have your block 10 by 10. So if you'd done the math before, even though it was kind of easy, 10 times 10, you'll get 100. So depending on how many times your outer loop is called is how many times your inner loop will run. So basically, the only thing you need to know for outer loop is this determines how many times this loop runs. So that is really the main part of that. And then the only thing you need to know about your inner loop is that is basically how many things it'll do or items it'll print, essentially. So you'll see this is just printing j plus a space, so j, etc. And then when it reaches the, because it goes through the loop and then it hits the outside of the inner loop, goes back, it just prints the new line because it's under. It's probably getting too complicated, but if there are any questions about that, you can just feel free to ask. And that's really all I wanted to show for loops. There isn't anything different from this compared to Java because the only real difference is this would just be line, and then whatever your value is. So that's the only difference here. And this you don't even need in Java because it just default runs in the console and it doesn't just need to disappear. But other than that, everything should run the exact same. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. And